All right. This is my most favorite part of the presentation. We're going to do some demos and of real capabilities that we have built, and it's live. And joining me now to do that is Amit Ganesh, SVP Product Development. And thanks, Amit. And it's a third year in a row. I'm sure you have some interesting things to show us. So I'll cede the stage to you, and you can walk us through some scenarios.
Thank you, Prakash. I got to first start out by saying that we are off to a really incredible start this year. I want to thank our development team because they have been working really hard to bring some amazing innovations in Management Cloud, both in management and security. I'm going to show you a small sliver of what we are doing, but hopefully that excites you and gets you motivated to see some of the demos that we have in the demo grounds.
Yeah, please. There's demo grounds which have more extensive demos as well.
So I'm going to get started with actually, before I go into this, I want to maybe talk a little bit about the first part of our demo. We're going to talk about business transactions. This is something that we have added to Management Cloud as a really new, powerful capability. Business transactions is really simple. They're basically application flows where typical applications that go through various stages, which are individual stages. Sometimes you need to really reason with those applications as a complete flow dealt with all together. To give you an example, you may have, for example, I'm going to use that in this demo here. You may have an order fulfillment application. An order fulfillment application, a user submits an order in there, then that submitted order goes through credit card processing. Maybe then I invoke something in my inventory to do some updates there. And then maybe I call one of my partner services, for example, that does logistics, shipping and all that good stuff, right? So that's typically how an order fulfillment transaction works, where all these different web services get integrated using something like SOA or maybe an integration cloud or something like that. The real challenge that comes with business transactions is that you don't really want to reason with individual activity in individual web services. You really want to reason with the whole business transaction taken as one single integral unit. So let me start out with log analytics and show you exactly how we do that in Management Cloud. Okay, so what you're seeing here is log analytics just focused on the order fulfillment application. Okay, so what you're seeing here is the detailed log entries of that application. Now, the nice thing is all these logs are together in one place where I can do search and analytics and all that good stuff on. But this doesn't really give me the big picture of what's going on in my applications, because it doesn't tell me anything about business transactions. It's telling me things about log records. So how do I deal with that? So to help with that, we have come up with a brand new capability in Oracle Management Cloud called Links. So here, let me go set that up so you can see that in action. So I'm going to configure Links. Configuring Links essentially is for what all I really need to do is to identify, you can think of like a primary key, the core attributes that define a flow. In this case, for order fulfillment, that would be my order ID and maybe a step name that my orders go through, and it'll be a little bit clear what that means. And that is all I really need to do. So let me go ahead and submit that. And now what you see suddenly is something really interesting. Those log records are all gone. Instead of working with log records and doing analytics on log records, now you're suddenly doing analytics on something much more closer to your business, which is actually an entire business transaction. So what you see in here on the left, for example, you see an order ID 114999. So this is an instance of an individual order that got discovered. Further to the right, you can see a step name that's happening that comprises this order. You can see all the steps that make this order. You can see the number of log records inside this order. You can see when it started, when it ended. You can see the duration that each of these steps take. Now, if I wanted to go switch back and see those log records, I can still do that. Let me show you an example. I can click on one of these steps, and now I can see all the individual records that comprise this step. So it gives me a view of the business transaction and still gives me the ability to deep dive, diagnose at the lowest level of granularity. So as you can see, this is really powerful and very helpful to me. But imagine a scenario where my customers are telling me that, hey, maybe I have some stuck orders, and I need to deal with those orders, and I don't really know which orders are getting stuck and what's going on. So although this is really great that I can see the orders here, I still have, instead of 1.2 million raw records, I still have 71,905 business flows to peruse through. That's still way too many flows for me to go page by page to see if there are any stuck orders. So what I'm going to show you here is this new capability, again, another new one that we have built, where you can take all this data and send it to our AI engine, then takes this data, runs it through machine learning, and perhaps it'll give me some interesting findings to help me troubleshoot through this problem. So let's see what happens. I'm going to click on Analyze, and wow, this is interesting. All those raw records are gone. All the business transactions are gone. Instead, what I'm left with is now with a very insightful view of what's happening with these business transactions. On the left, you see these blue circles. They're telling me the normal behavior that machine learning has learned about my application. And what's really interesting is you can really see the circles, the squares on the right. These are the ones, the x-axis here is actually the time. You may not be able to see it. It's so small font size. It's really telling me that some of these business transactions and some of the steps within them are taking an inordinately long period of time to execute. So I can now maybe click on it further and see what's going on. Here it's telling me that it has found 17 linked events. These are these business transactions. If I want, I can drill down further into them to the 637 log records. Remember, we started out with 1.2 million. I can go drill down and find out what's going on. It's telling me why this has been found as anomalous by my machine learning algorithms. It's telling me that, hey, normally these things take 1.5 to 17.5 seconds. Instead, it's taking almost 2 minutes to execute this step. Now, this is very insightful information because, one of the steps I had in my workflow, in my business transaction, was actually going out into an external service provider like a logistics company. So maybe it's a shipment, so perhaps it's an issue with one of the web services I call them, so I can go diagnose it further. So as you can see here, this gives me incredible insight into what's happening. Remember, I started with 1.2 million records, and these were raw records. Then I took those 1.2 million records, I converted them, up-leveled them into 72,000 business transactions. I sent those into machine learning to then derive insights, like what's normal and what's not normal, that I can then act upon and maybe do some remediative action on.
So for all the things you just showed, outside of providing us the raw logs, does the customer need to do anything, or will the service take over from just taking over from the logs?
That's one thing that we really wanted to do here, to make the experience as easy as possible. So outside of just configuring the fact and identifying, letting Management Cloud know exactly which two fields in my logs across hundreds of different log sources, identify uniquely my order and step, I had nothing else that I needed to do. In fact, all those things that you saw, all the shipment stages and all those things were completely discovered by Management Cloud. In fact, if a new step comes in tomorrow, it will show up there automatically.
All right. You had one more demo you wanted to show, right?
Yeah. So what you saw here is machine learning applied to logs. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And to give you another example of how we apply machine learning, I'm going to show how machine learning applies to metrics and configs, the things that we work on a day-to-day basis. So let's switch gears a little bit. And before I do that, maybe I give you a little more context on this demo. This particular order application was built using a modern tech stack. I'm using containers and microservices and all that good stuff. I have more than 100 containers running this application. I have those containers actually running Node.js, so it's using a modern stack in there. And if you look at the number of components in the application, I have more than 1,000 actually different components that make up the application. These are functions and modules that application performance monitoring actually monitors. But the problem we'll set out to solve is one in which my customers are complaining that seeing some intermittent performance issues. So let me head over to Management Cloud and see how it helps me troubleshoot such a problem. So I'm going to start out with an application dashboard. This is my 360-degree view of everything happening about my application. I can see my alerts. I can see some business metrics here, like an order trend. I can see how my performance page is. But I don't really see any severe alerts showing up here. I don't see severe problems showing up. Everything looks quite reasonable, quite normal between logs, database, applications, everything. So I'm going to drill down into APM, see if I can find something more in there. Again, I don't see anything wrong with the infrastructure targets. Application performance monitoring is continuously monitoring end user experience that my customers of this applications are experiencing. And across all these geographies, I don't really see anything standing out. But I do know that some customers are reporting some intermittent problems. Now I have a real conundrum here because nothing is showing up. There are no thresholds being breached. But I still got a problem. So what do I do next? So the only thing that I'm really left with is going through those 1,400 different server requests that comprise my applications, clicking through each of them, and analyzing the metric streams in the hopes that I will find something or that might be indicative of that problem. It's really, really cumbersome for me to execute on, right? So here comes machine learning. I'm going to call my AI engine, see what it can do for me. So let's click on Analyze here, see what it has to find, what it found for me here. This is something very interesting. So it analyzed a lot of data, but it found only 2 anomalies. So this gives you an example of another example how machine learning is really powerful here. It was humanly impossible for me to go to 20,000 metric streams that pertain to my application and try to identify anomalies in it. Instead, what machine learning is doing here is it's going through all that data, thousands and thousands of data points, and really bringing out the things of interest to me. So, in fact, it found here that there were 2 containers that seem to have deviated from the norm of performance that everybody else is going through. So one thing I can do now is maybe run a correlation analysis to see if those 2 containers and that check credit card server request correlates with some other changes that are happening in my application. So let's go ahead and do that. Clicking and correlate, what it is now telling me is that it found that these 2 containers also happen to have a missing patch on their SSL library. Now, this is really interesting information that all the other containers, 255 containers are okay, but just these 2 containers with the performance problem also seem to have a config problem in them. Now, SSL library patching issue could be a security problem that by itself is interesting to me, or perhaps this is the root cause of my performance problem. So as you can see, I get some tremendous insight by running correlation analysis, everything happening behind the scenes using machine learning in Management Cloud that then I can act upon and deal with. Now, one thing that you saw happen here is pretty common in most real-world environments where config issues can sometimes lead to problems, right? And I like to be proactive about them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to config management and see what I can do there. Okay, so let's go to config management and see what we can do there. So here I am at my database configuration management homepage. I can see my more than 400 databases. I can go through each of these databases. This is what you typically are used to doing in any other tool out there. I can click on a database. I can go see more details about the configuration about our database. But I got a real problem here. If I got 400 databases and I got thousands of configurations per database, how am I going to find what is anomalous? How am I going to find that drift that places one database different from everybody else that is out there? It's really, there's a lot of data in here. It's good that I got the data, but I don't know how to get the insights by simply clicking through each of these databases. So I'm really pleased to tell you that we have yet another groundbreaking innovation that I'm about to show you that we have developed using machine learning, where we take all this data and are able to create some incredible insights for you to consume. So let's invoke our AI engine and see what it discovered here. So what you're seeing here is a chart that shows the map of those 467 databases of how their configurations look, as opposed to imagine looking through millions of data points of what's going on with these configurations. What it has found, if you look in this insights section, is saying that there were 81 distinct configurations that machine learning discovered in my asset base. It's telling me that there were 3 centroid, that's a really techie word, so I'm not going to repeat that, but think of these as 3 clusters of similar configurations that it found. 3 large clusters. These are these 3 circles. Notice that I didn't enter anything here. Machine learning automatically discovered these 3 clusters for me. And if I want to know more details about them, I can click on that cluster and it can tell me more about it. For example, here it's telling me there are 97 entities that make that cluster. It's telling me the specific parameters that belong to that cluster. All this is automatically discovered for you. Not just that, now if I want to know what's going on with some of these databases that look like satellites around that cluster, I can actually click on them and do a comparison with that center of that cluster. And here I can see that this one database, Sales Test, has drifted away from the center, that center of that cluster, and I can see the specific parameters that has drifted away from. And now that I know these changes and I can see when they were done, I could actually right here click on a remediate and make that database snap back to the cluster configuration that I would like it to be at.
This is the orchestration that can auto-remediate that for you.
When you click on remediate, it will actually invoke orchestration flow that will auto-remediate the situation.
Okay.
So here you can see some really powerful machine learning capabilities that we have built into every aspect of management and security. And like Prakash said, tomorrow, Larry Ellison in his keynote will talk more about what we are doing around security, and so you'll see more machine learning applied to security there. So one thing I wanted to kind of leave you with is that what we have done here by building machine learning into all aspects of management is that we have really fundamentally changed the way users do management, operations, and security. Instead of users having to go to thousands of pieces of data to understand what's going on in their system, to troubleshoot problems, instead machine learning is continuously analyzing thousands and thousands, maybe millions of data points to really bring those insights to our customers.
All right. Thanks, Amit. I appreciate it as always.
Thanks. Great to be here.